Before I start, this is just a reminder, Shit's Fucked is based on my own experiences with sobriety, mental health, and trauma. Each person's experiences and recovery is different. I hope you enjoy the podcast, but please note that I am not a medical professional. However, I hope to introduce you to resources and people who may be able to help. Welcome to season 2 of Shit's Fucked. It's your host Paris here, and I'm showing up today in my dressing gown and jammies because I have been so sick for over a week now, and I'm just the type of person who does not care to throw on makeup or even fucking brush my hair when I'm not feeling good. So if you can't have me at my worst, you can't have me at my best. Now, for those who are new here, I've battled alcohol addiction for 17 years, struggled with methamphetamine for 10 years, and worked in the adult industry to support my habits for 3 years. I've been diagnosed with BPD, so borderline personality disorder, and CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I've come a long way. So now I'm 1 year sober from meth, and I've completely redefined my relationship with alcohol. Now I'm on a mission to discuss mental health and addiction, raising awareness and providing resources to help others build better lives. Through my own experiences, alongside guests in the industry, and stories shared from those with lived experiences, we'll tackle the tough topics to start building a support network for those struggling with their mental health and addiction issues. So just very quickly, we currently have some merch available on our Etsy store. I'm going to fly through this. So the first one is a unisex oversized shirt. I don't know if you can see that this well, but it's got healing starts from within in the back. It's definitely my favorite, and I love oversized clothes, so hence why a lot of my merch will be this kind of design. And I've also got the We Do Recover singlet. It's plain at the back for now. I might change that design. And we've also got this mug that I designed as well. So it's Be Kind. But yeah, I thought it was pretty cute, if I don't say so myself. So you can find those on our Etsy page. It's Shit's Fucked. I'll drop in the thing here. But yeah, definitely check it out. It's all reasonably priced, and it would definitely help support the podcast. Go a long way. Now, before we dive into today's episode, I do have a big fat trigger warning for this one. There are a lot of discussions of drug and alcohol use, including needles. So please be mindful and take care of yourself while watching this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Today's special guest, we have J Whiteley, who's a comedian, currently actually over in Adelaide and doing some fringe shows at the moment. So welcome to the show, Stephen. So happy for you to join us.
It's nice to be here. I'm half an hour in the future.
Yeah, half an hour in the future.
The first time Adelaide's been ahead of the rest of the country in anything.
So savage, but so true.
It's true. I lived here for 10 years.
Oh, did you? Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you're currently living over east now?
Yes, I'm in Brisbane. It was actually Fringe Festival that lured me into Brisbane. I came down here to do shows during Fringe. And if you've ever been to Adelaide during Fringe, it's just a party. It's just 24-hour parties. And I got here and I went, oh my God, this place is so vibrant. It's so alive. I'm going to move here. And then like a week after Fringe finished, I was walking through town, 6 o'clock on a Tuesday. There's just one old guy pushing a broom, just going, nah, mate, it's closed. It's closed. It's only good for 3 weeks of the year. But anyway, I'm back now. It's fun. It's good. No, visit Adelaide. It's lovely. It's lovely. They're going to turn up with pitchforks and burning torches.
Oh my God, this episode's really going to promote some tourism for Adelaide.
Yeah. Yes.
I love your words, David.
Anyway, all right. Don't mention the barrels.
Oh man! All right, we're gonna jump straight in. We're gonna jump straight in. So, can you share with
Sure.
us a bit about your background and where your addictions first began?
Sure. So I started using drugs as a teenager. I left home at a really early age. We won't go into that, but me and my father didn't get along. And so, yeah, as a teenager, I was hanging out on the streets and in youth hostels and developed an affirmation for basically just getting off my face. And then I got into the entertainment industry at a young age. I was a musician and I was in a band at like 17, 18 years old. And we started playing with some of the big boys. And out of respect for them, I won't mention the name of the bands, but there was always drugs around, speed and cocaine and all that sort of stuff. And so I just got into it then, and I constantly had excuses to be using. I always needed energy to put on a good show, and I mean, to be quite honest, when you are driving 8 to 10 hours between gigs and you're performing every night, and you do pride yourself on putting on high energy shows, then using methamphetamines is completely justified in your own head. And so I continued using drugs for 20 years, 25 years. I finally gave that up in, I think, about 2007, 2008. I stopped using drugs, but I had developed a massive drinking habit that I didn't even really recognize because it was masked by everything else that I was doing. And because drinking is so acceptable, and because I'd done all this other stuff in the past, which had never been a secret, everybody's known for a long time about my history with drugs. Everyone kind of accepted my drinking as a lesser of two evils. And then, unfortunately, I started working on cruise ships, which gave me the ability to just drink around the clock, because on a cruise ship, you could just lock yourself in your cabin, you put a do not disturb sign on the door, and people just leave you alone. And I just started drinking literally around the clock, 24 hours a day. And in the space of 12 to 18 months, over 2017 to 2018, it spiraled completely out of control and the wheels fell off very, very quickly. And in 2019, I went into detox in Queensland, came out in May, and I've been sober ever since. So this year will be 5 years, and clean and sober. So yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, and congratulations on 5 years. That's awesome.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
Thank you. Yes.
So you've been in the entertainment industry for quite some time. What year actually was it that you first got into the entertainment industry?
Oh, we don't talk about things like that. That's horrible.
We're going to divulge
Would
your
have been,
age, are we?
oh yes, yeah. We don't talk about that. Would have been 92 was when we went in. I went into the studio with Avant Garde and we recorded Ecosystem, which was our first EP. Which, yeah, unfortunately, it's really annoying because it was before the time of camera phones and YouTube and all that sort of stuff. So I'm sure there's got to be documented footage out there somewhere. But when you live a life like I have, and you're constantly moving, and you live out of a suitcase, I've walked away from housefuls of possessions like 2 or 3 times just because it was easier than going back to deal with what was back there. So I don't have any of it. But it was around 92, 93 that I got into it, like, yeah, full time.
Yeah, and I'm hearing what you were saying before about how, you were pretty much quite susceptible to being introduced to that kind of world because of, the time deadlines and having the high energy shows. Like I can completely see how this is a recipe for disaster with anyone who is prone to addiction.
Absolutely. And I think you'll find a lot of creative people, not that we use it as an excuse, but I think you'll find a lot of creative people are very susceptible to addictive behavior. We have a tendency to latch onto things and to hyper focus and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, addiction is just the perfect it gives you focus. It gives you something to focus all of your energy on. Like when you're in the midst of an addiction, your entire life revolves around feeding that addiction. You're either looking for it, or you're trying to find money to come up with it, or you're, engaged in it in one way or another. So it's really, really good for, well, not good, but it gives you purpose, I find. And creative types who, we suck it up. We're sponges for addiction, basically.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. I'm definitely a bit of a creative type myself, and yes, I was very, very susceptible to addictions for sure. So I can completely relate to that.
And also with something that gives you energy, you take it and then you can just lock yourself, as I used to do, in a room with a notepad and pen or a voice recorder or whatever for 8-9 hours at a time. And the terrible thing about it, though, is that it's such a false confidence, because you think you're being so incredibly creative, and then you look back at it and you just go, oh, this is all shit.
Yeah, I'm just talking absolute nonsense.
How did I even think that was fun? What's even worse, though, is and I've had this happen, is when you don't have a buffer and you have you go on a bender and you'll have like all this creativity, and then you take it on stage immediately. And then you just have people sitting in the audience looking at you going, and you can see people looking at each other going, what the fuck is he talking about? And you're
like, what an absolute cunt.
Yeah, exactly. And you're on stage going, no, seriously, Smurfs can't surf because their feet are too big. And it makes perfect sense for you, and everyone else is just like. Usually during a festival, you can get away with it, though, because half the people in the audience are as fucking cooked as you are. And they go, oh, yeah, no, this makes perfect sense. And then you just feel... You feel so sorry for the normal straight people that have walked in going, what kind of a fucking carnival is this?
No, I definitely can relate to that. I remember there was a few times during my meth addiction where I'd write these really like lengthy and what I thought were really inspirational posts and messages that I'd send to like a group chat of friends. And then when I'd sobered up, I'd read it back and I was like, holy fuck, none of that made sense. Literally all my friends were like, well, shit, she's back on drugs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Or you do something and you wake up to like 57 messages in your phone, just everyone you know going, are you okay?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
And you just have to send back just one blank message, go, no, I'm fucking not. I am so far from okay.
No, definitely. That's usually when I deactivate all my accounts and I go off grid.
I've got to be honest. I was kind of lucky that as I said, like I kicked the drugs in like 2006, 2007, and I wasn't hugely into social media before that. So there are quite a few people who were, and I see photos of myself. There's one photo that sticks out. I might actually send it to you after this.
Yeah, for sure.
It's me in the midst of a massive meth bender. I'm skinny and I'm just gripping this. I've got a death grip on this microphone stand, and my jaws just like, you just see me on stage going, fucking laugh. And I just go, wow. And yeah, at the time, I was so convinced that no one had a clue what I was doing. I was like, I'm fucking nailing this. I am so nailing this.
Totally undercover. No one has a fucking clue. Yeah.
I should get an Oscar for this. Where's my trophy?
This performance is elite. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've definitely experienced that as well. Like I actually spoke about that in one of my previous episodes with my sister, and she was like, "You thought that you were kind of, hiding everything and no one knew, whereas there was a full like high beam fucking light on you, and everyone could see what the fuck was going on. It was you that couldn't."
Absolutely. Like, even when I was drinking, because I was still married back then, and I thought I was hiding it. Because I thought I was really clever because I drink cask wine. And cask wine's brilliant because no one can see through it. It's not like a bottle that you can keep an eye on the level. It's just this magical cardboard box that lives in the fridge. And I thought I was nailing it. And then I remember having this brief moment of clarity where I was sneaking my cask wine bottle out to the bin to swap it over, to swap the casks around. And I'm like, oh, I'm fucking so good at that. And then I open it up, and the entire bin is just full of empty casks. And I'm like, oh no, I think she might have an idea. But we convince ourselves that we're the masters of disguise. We're like, yeah,
we do, and we get really sneaky, don't we? We really do.
That's one thing that I've noticed talking to other addicts, and so is the similarities in how we mask or try and hide what we're doing, and especially with alcos, hiding the booze around the house, or different ways. When I was working on cruise ships, I didn't want people to know how much I was drinking, so I became the master of I would buy Gatorade or vitamin water. And drink vodka, and the beauty of vodka is that you can mix it with anything. It's the most sociable alcohol in all the world. It gets along with everything, and people would notice I would just be walking around, and I'd always have a Gatorade on me, and people would be like, "Oh, he must be so hydrated," and I was fucking hammered. But talking to other people, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, I used to do the same thing." And then you talk to people about the old coffee cup at work that's whatever. And,
an Irish coffee.
Yep. They say necessity is the mother of invention. I think addiction is quite possibly the mother of invention. We come up with things. I remember just smuggling alcohol onto cruise ships in sunscreen bottles, shampoo bottles. Just amazing. I was almost impressed.
We do get creative, don't we? Almost impressed.
Do.
I love that.
If MacGyver had a meth problem, he would have been heaps more creative.
So what were some of the key moments that made you realize, hey, I might have a problem here?
When I was smuggling alcohol in shampoo containers.
When I looked in the bin, I saw all the dust.
I think you always know. I mean, my problem, I've got heaps of them, but one of the biggest problems for me was that I started doing heroin when I was 17. I met
a
woman. Women, drugs, and haircuts have always been my worst decisions. And I met this woman. She was 21. I was 17. I thought it was love. And she just happened to be a practicing junkie, and she introduced me to heroin, and in turn she introduced me to needles. And for the rest of my life, I think I became more addicted to the needle than what was actually in it. I became addicted to the whole process of mixing up and shooting up and tying and all that sort of stuff. And I think one of the earliest times that I realized I may have had a problem with addiction was when I was literally shooting up with water out of the bottom of a toilet bowl in a public toilet in Bondi in Sydney. And I just scored, and then I realized that and back in those days you used to be able to go to chemists or virtually anywhere and get fit packs so that you didn't have to reuse needles and all that sort of stuff. And I realized I didn't have one, but I had an old fit that I was carrying in my top pocket, and just couldn't even be bothered walking across the road to the chemist to grab a clean fit pack. I was that desperate to get this shit in my arm. I was very responsible about it, though. I flushed it like 2 or 3 times to make sure that the water in the bowl was clean. So, it wasn't like I just, but even at that, even at that time, you sit there and you just go, fuck, I am not in control of this whatsoever. But there were so many times during my addictions where I knew that I full blown wasn't in control. And I think my biggest turning point with the alcohol was when I drank a liter of vodka before I got off a ship. So that was before lunchtime. And actually passed out at the immigration desk in Noumea Airport in New Caledonia. Somehow or another, I'd made it to the airport. I'd managed to check in. I'd made it through security. And then I was at immigration handing my passport over to get my passport stamped. And I don't remember any of this. And apparently I just passed out cold on the spot and just collapsed,
Oh
and
my goodness.
was carted off into a small room and told that I would not be joining the plane. And luckily, there was another comedian there who was getting off another ship. And I had known this other comedian for 20 odd years, and she was a good friend. And she came to my defense and managed to talk them into letting me on the plane. And I flew home, and I had no recollection of any of this. And I got home thinking everything was good. And the next day I got an email from my agent asking me to explain why I'd been apprehended at an airport and created an international disturbance, and why the cruise line that I was working for at the time had received, their head office had received emails saying that one of their crew members had been apprehended at an airport, blah, blah, blah. And that was my turning point. I remember just in that moment having just this clarity of like, you either sort this shit out now, or you're going to lose everything. And at the time, and I mean, we'll put a pin in this, we'll circle back to it because it's why we're actually talking. But at the time, I realized I was going to lose everything, and I had a lot to lose. I had a really good career that was going well. I had a wife at the time, had a nice house, had everything going for me. And I just remember having this moment of clarity and going back to times where I was in the midst of an addiction, where I was homeless, where I was broke, where I was doing horrible things to get money for my next hit and stuff like that, and seeing where I was then, seeing where I was at this point in time, and realizing that I had this opportunity to either sort it out or I was going to go right back there. And luckily I made the right decision, and that's why I'm here now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Stephen. That sounds like quite a journey. And I can definitely can relate to that sense of there's not usually that one point where we recognize there's a problem. There's usually a number of things that happen. But I remember there was a few times during my meth addiction where I might have run out of gear, and then I was, crawling on the carpet floor, like looking for crumbs. And later, I remember oh my God, why did I just do that?
I remember I used to save all my bags. And then, if you run out or you couldn't get on or whatever, just sitting there for hours, just washing down bags just to try and get a taste. But it was a good way to kill it. Good way to kill a few hours on a Sunday morning. I wasn't doing it. It's not like I was going to church.
Oh goodness. So working in the entertainment industry, especially on cruise ships, can certainly present some unique challenges when battling an addiction. So how did your career impact your addiction, and what strategies or tools do you now have in place to navigate it?
I think the biggest thing that I had, especially with the drinking. So luckily for me, by the time I got on cruise ships, the drugs were behind me, so that was never an issue. The thing that stopped me before cruise ships from becoming a full-blown alcoholic was that I'd always been a functioning junkie, and I've always had a job. And so with the drinking, having a day job, because as addicts, we always like to justify and we like to separate ourselves from other addicts or whatever. And I never wanted to be an alcoholic. So to me, the separation was, an alcoholic was someone who drank before work or who drank at work, who had a sneaky bottle of rum. And I never wanted to be that guy. I never wanted to be the guy sneaking off the job site to run down the pub and smash 6 beers. And I worked with guys like that my whole life. So I always had that buffer, and that was what stopped me from becoming functioning to non-functioning. When I worked on cruise ships, all of a sudden, I didn't have that buffer anymore, and I didn't have that reason to not drink 24 hours a day. So when I finally got sober, the biggest challenge for me was, I remember realizing once I'd sobered up, I was like, fuck, there's so many hours in the day.
Because time slows down.
Oh, yeah. Because when you drink, and I used to a lot, I'd wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and realize that I didn't have a show until 10 o'clock that night. So I'd drink 2 bottles of wine and put myself back to sleep, and just to kill time, And so the biggest thing for me, what I found I had to do was just find things to occupy me and to occupy my brain and to keep me focused, so that I didn't get bored and relapse out of sheer boredom. So what I started doing was I'd take a PlayStation on board, and I'd play
Nice.
computer games. Yeah, I'd play computer games during the day. I started going to the gym, started walking, and just basically started keeping active. I remember when I was at home, the first time I had at home, because I walked straight out of detox back onto a cruise ship, which everyone was like, that's a recipe for disaster, but it kept me focused. It kept me everything. And I remember when I got home, I was like, fuck, what am I going to do to kill the time at home? And I painted my fence at home, and we had like a rather large block. It was like 800 squares. And I started at the front corner and painted this wooden fence with a brush for like a week solid. And I would go out there at 8 o'clock in the morning with my bucket and my radio and my paint, and I would just sit there and I just painted. And it was the most well-painted fence. I did like all three sides of every slat of wood of this picket fence. And I just needed something to focus on. I just needed something to just eat up the hours. I needed something to fill the time between waking up and going back to bed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've actually used a very common technique, which is the 3Ds. It's delay, distract, and then you decide. So it's just putting in that time between, relapsing, or no, sorry, staying sober and lapsing. So just filling that time with something to distract yourself with, and you can focus on, because it's so true. A lot of people do end up relapsing out of boredom because you don't know how to function or experience life without it, and then suddenly everything becomes really, really dull. It's so bizarre.
And I think that's where alcohol is such a pain to try and kick as well, because I found with drugs, if I wanted to kick, whenever I wanted to kick, it was a simple case of deleting all the contacts out of my phone and just not going to certain places where drugs were going to be. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 second that giving up one addiction is easier than the other. That's not my
Of
point
course,
at all.
but one is socially accepted and the other one
exactly.
isn't.
and it took me a good few months to break certain habits that I had that I didn't even realize that I had. Of talking to people and just even in general conversation, just using the terms, I will have to catch up for a beer. It was something that I'd been saying for 30 years. And just breaking that habit and just realizing how ingrained into our social interactions drinking can be. And, I remember sitting, this was only recently, about 8 or 9 months ago, was up in Airlie Beach on a cruise ship. And I was sitting with another guy who's now completely sober as well. And we were sitting at a cafe having lunch. And I just had this brief moment where I looked around and I said to him, I said, hey, check this out. And it's something that you never think of until you become aware of it. And I don't want to be a wowser, and I'm not here to say, all alcohol is evil and we should purge it from within. But I looked around this restaurant and I said to Pete, I said, to have a look at this, every single table, every single place setting's got a wine glass in front of it. Every single one. I said, now imagine walking into a restaurant and every single table had a crack pipe or a bong or a needle and a spoon. Like this is how much we separate the severity between alcohol and all of these other drugs.
Absolutely.
When in actual fact, alcohol is just as, if not more dangerous than all the other drugs combined.
It definitely is more dangerous. It's the biggest killer out of all of them.
Because it's so socially acceptable. I mean, when you look at Australian culture, and it's not just Australia, it's it's around the world, but we live in Australia, so let's focus here. Turning 18 is such a major milestone because you become an adult. You're legally recognised by Australia. You can vote, you get married, you can buy a house, you can do all this other stuff. And yet no one gives a shit about any of that. All anyone focuses on when they turn 18 is the fact that they can have a drink. And it's not just them, their parents. You look at parents whose kids are about to turn 18. What's the number one thing they all focus on? Oh, I'm going to get my son to take me to the pub and he can buy me a beer. Or I'm going to go out and get smashed with my daughter. Or, and it's such a cultural thing. And I mean, I'm watching a lot of stuff and I'm reading a lot of stuff about this current generation aren't drinking as much. And I think, well, thank fuck for that. Maybe they've watched my generation and our generation and what we've done. and decided that there's got to be more to it than that.
I think there's definitely become more awareness of this issue, because I have read that recently as well, that has reduced, which I was really surprised about, because I was like, cost of living is rising, like the economy is fucked, like how is that reduced?
Maybe that's it. Maybe. Well, I mean, this is the other thing, is this is the beauty of being clean and sober now, is you're blissfully unaware. I only found out recently, apparently, a pint of beer costs you about $15 in a pub nowadays.
Yes, that's so true. It's crazy expensive.
Absolutely, fucking no wonder these young kids aren't drinking. They're there and they're like, well, I can either drink or I can fucking eat. And luckily, they're making good decisions.
Yes, absolutely. But I think there's definitely more awareness being made on it, and a lot more people are talking about it now. Like, we're here right now talking about it, and just
and it's what we need. We need more conversations about it. I think I learned during lockdown that there's again, I try and walk this fine line between not being an evil naysayer wowser of everything's evil and no one should do anything. The one thing that I like to clarify with people is that I am not anti-drugs. As far as I'm concerned, if you can have a healthy relationship with recreational drug use, go for it. That's what they're for. If you can, and I have friends of mine who can. I have some friends of mine who are in their mid-50s. I have friends of mine who are in their mid-50s and they're mad for dance music, and a few times a year they will go out. One of their favourite DJs will be over. There'll be a big rave on or something, and they'll pull out their fluffy fluoro baggy pants and their beads and everything, and they'll go out and they will take drugs and they will dance their ass off and they will have an absolutely sensational time. And then when it's all over, they come home, they put their shit away, they pack it back up in the wardrobe and they go about life, and it's not an issue. If you can do that, then go for it. But also realize that there's a lot of us out there who can't. Some of us can do that. I myself personally, I like to party till I'm homeless.
Yeah, I can't do it. Until you're homeless. No.
But this is the thing. You run that fine line between wanting people to recognize the danger that's there. And I realized during lockdown, there's a lot of people out there that have got a much bigger problem with alcohol than they're admitting or they're letting on to other people. And one of the biggest groups that I noticed just through watching Facebook posts and stuff like that, because you learn to read between the lines, is stay-at-home mums. And
I was just thinking that.
And then you start putting the pieces together, and you see all these posts about, is it wine o'clock yet? And I'm doing this and doing that. And then you see the news reports of mums getting done, either dropping their kids off to school or pick them up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, being 2 or 3 times the legal limit because they've had nothing to do but sit at home with a bottle of wine all afternoon. And that's when you start to realize the depth of the problem that we have in society. With everyone looks at tradies who go to the pub every afternoon from 3 o'clock, and that was me, from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and power drink during happy hour and all that sort of stuff. But no one's looking at what's happening behind closed doors. And I've run into, through my journey, a succession of women who have come up to me and said, I started out having a glass of wine after I picked the kids up from school. Then it started to be just before I picked them up from school. Then it was lunchtime and stuff like that. And it's just, with anything, it's such a gradual decline that you don't notice it's a problem until it's a serious problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been in a few AA meetings where I've heard those exact stories where that's how they've ended up picking up a habit. But moving on to the next question, what was I going to ask you next? I think it was more, you'd mentioned previously to me that you had some challenges with the detox center in Queensland that you went to, not recognizing the severity of your alcoholism. Do you want to share that?
So when I decided that I wanted to get sober, I went to see, I spoke to people and they said the first thing you need to do is talk to your GP. So I went to my GP, and he very quickly worked out that with the amount that I was drinking, it would be extremely unhealthy for me to go cold turkey.
Well, you're going to be at risk of a seizure if you weren't medically
definitely
assisted.
Or organ failure and stuff like that. So he said to me, he said, you need to detox. And so I got in contact with a place called HADS, which is the Hearst and Alcohol and Drug Service, which is run out of the Royal Brisbane Hospital. Now, please, I'm not having a go at anyone that works there. I'm not having a go at the place. I'm not having a go at anyone. This is just simply what happened. And I got in contact with them. I said, I've been told by my GP that I need to detox. This is blah, blah, blah. I told them all the details, told them what was going on. I said, I work on cruise ships. I'm currently drinking probably about 2.5 to 3 litres of wine a day, and then anywhere between 8 to a dozen beers. And then on top of that, if I go out. And then they got back to me and told me that they weren't able to find a spot for me in their program because I didn't meet their criteria. And so that was like really bad news. That crushed me because I'd finally, by that stage, I was so sick of drinking, and all I wanted was to be able to stop drinking. All I wanted was to be sober and not have this monkey on my fucking back anymore. And then I saw this opening. I was like, detox, this would be the way to do it. This would be great. I'll finally be fucking rid of everything. And then they snatched it away from me. And then, of course, that leads you into the spiral of depression and self-loathing that all addicts live with. And it was just very, very lucky that my now ex-wife, it's all amicable, don't worry, she's lovely. She had convinced me to go to a group meeting at the local Queensland Health Rehabilitation Centre in Redlands in Brisbane, where I live. And I went down there, and it was the most depressing thing because nobody in this group actually had any interest in being sober. They were all just there because they'd been forced to by their parole officers or by the courts or whatever. And I remember watching this counsellor come out right at the beginning of the whole session. She goes, right, who's just here to get their court papers signed? And everyone was like, yeah. I was like the only person there. And it was because of that I made a throwaway comment at the end of the whole thing. I said, this is bullshit. I'm the one person that wants help, and I'm the only one that can't get it. And the counsellor turned around to me and she said, what are you talking about? Why can't you get help? I told her my situation, told her what was going on, told her that I'd been refused service because I didn't meet their criteria. And I remember her saying, that's bullshit. You are literally the textbook of their criteria. She said, wait here, don't go anywhere. Went off, made a telephone call. To this day, don't know who she called, who she spoke to, or what she said, but I'm forever grateful that she did. She came back about 10 minutes later and said, expect a telephone call in the next half an hour, you're in. And somehow or another, they got me in. Yeah, so I found out afterwards through talking to people that their whole philosophy behind the me not meeting their criteria was that I wasn't on the bones of my ass because I still had a job, because I still had a supportive partner, because I still had a roof over my head, because I still had the clothes on my back. I wasn't destitute enough to warrant assistance.
Really?
Yeah. So basically, the way the Queensland health system is set up at the moment, while you've still got something to lose, they're not satisfied until you've fucking lost it.
Which is just ridiculous because we shouldn't be allowing people to get to that point. Like, we need to catch them before that.
Exactly. You want to talk about people being a drain on resources and stuff like that. You're going to wait until someone who's got a job doesn't have a job and doesn't have an income and then needs assisted housing and then needs assisted Medicare and then needs assisted everything. Whereas you could nip it in the bud, give them the assistance while they've still got a house and a job and a wife and everything to go back to and sort their shit out. So it's a serious flaw in the system. To a certain degree, I can almost understand where they're coming from, where we do have these people that are destitute and we do have these people who need assistance. But I think we need to realize that as much as we need to help those people, we need to help people before they reach that stage as well.
Yes, definitely. And I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah, when it comes to addiction, I don't think there are levels. You're either an addict or you're not an addict. And whether you've got assets or not should not determine.
Yeah, it shouldn't even be a factor at all. Like, I mean, no. I think as well, the reason that they're obviously or might be looking at these things is because there obviously isn't enough resources as it is to be able to take the amount of people that do need this kind of assistance. So they are having to have these really ridiculous and harsh criterias to be able
where
to
you
choose who
actually
can come in.
exactly where you have to sit around a table and go, well, who's more important? Like that is and this
Who's
is why I
worse off?
said right. Yeah, and this is why I said right at the very beginning, I'm not judging the people who are making these decisions. Their hands are obviously
It's a
tied, and
system.
but obviously, surely common sense would prevail and say, rather than lessening the people we can help, let's increase the amount of help we're able to give.
Yes, exactly.
But I mean, fuck, man, if I had all the answers to everything, I wouldn't be telling dick jokes in a tent tonight. I'd be driving a much nicer car and making decisions that would save the fucking world. So, you know, there's no easy answer. There's never going to be an easy answer. And if it is an easy answer, chances are it's not the right one.
Yeah, look, it's tough because there's also a lot of stigma and stereotyping as well that still comes around addiction. And it's even within those sectors as well, unfortunately, that the workers within those fields can have judgment as well. So that's something that I'm learning at the moment in my Cert 4 in alcohol and other drugs, like really just having to be mindful of not making those prejudice assumptions of people and to separate from that completely and just focus on the addiction, not obviously focus on the person, but not have that be the main factor. It's what they're dealing with within their addiction.
Most certainly. And I remember when I was going into HADS, when I was being processed, going through the thing, and there was an old guy, an orderly, or I don't know whether he was a volunteer or whether he worked there, but he was an old guy, and he's obviously seen fucking hundreds of thousands of people come and go through this thing. I remember him coming out and looking at me, and he was taking my details, and he said, "I've never seen you here before." And I said, "I've never been here before." And he goes, "Right." And I said to him, "And you'll never see me again." And he just looked at me and laughed, and he goes, "Yeah, I hear that all the time." And to tell you the truth, it was so good because that was one of the things that stuck in my brain.
Motivator.
Fuck you. Fuck you. And I want to go back there. I hope he's still working there because I'd love to go back on May 8th, which is my 5-year anniversary, and just go, But I remember another thing that stuck in my head was I remember sitting there and there was an old guy who was going in for what I can only imagine must have been the 100th time. And he was one of those people you don't know whether he was 50 or 80, but he had what I can only assume were all of his worldly possessions in 2 green Woolies bags tied up at the bottom of his feet. And I remember sitting there and had another brief moment. And I was drunk as shit when I went into detox. I'm going out on a high, so and I just remember looking at this guy and I remember having another moment of clarity, going, "Steve, this is your moment. This is the fork in the road, and you either sort your shit out, or that's going to be you." And that's if I live that long, because I found out afterwards from the doctors and that I was in the first stages of liver failure, and I was a very, very unhealthy.
You are so lucky you stopped at that point in time. My God.
I absolutely know. I remember having my counselor say to me after about 6 weeks, and she was like, how's the comedy going? I said, really, really well. And she goes, "You've got no problem with your recall or remember?" I said, "No, brilliant." She just goes, "Fuck, you're lucky." She said, "I know people whose memory is absolutely shot after doing half of what you've done for half as long." So, and that's one of the things that keeps me on the straight and narrow now, man, is knowing that I think I've used up all my chances. If I'm a cat, I'm definitely on my 9th life. And I know I'm not going to see the end of my next addiction. It's going to be the end of me. So that's what keeps me here. Yeah.
Yes. So as a comedian, would you say your comedic work has been influenced by these experiences?
It's given me some fucking cool stories. My comedy, I don't write jokes or anything like that. I literally now just get on stage and tell stories. I try not to glamorize or glorify or anything like that. But I was having this conversation with someone just this morning, and I was saying that when I got sober, I had definitely moments of doubt where I questioned whether or not I was actually funny, or whether it was the alcohol that made me funny. And there are actually a couple of stories of comedians who have sobered up and then not being able to perform anymore. They just found out they weren't funny. It was only
Mm.
the alcohol that made them funny. And I was like, oh, fuck, is that me? And then you get all this self-doubt. You go, maybe I'm not funny. And it was just the alcohol that made me think I was being funny, And I got the flashback to the episode of The Simpsons where he gets drunk at the dinner party and embarrasses himself. And he's thinking back and it's all in black and white. And he's wearing a tuxedo and telling all these really witty stories. And then it shows the real scene of just him being this bumbling fucking idiot. And I was like, holy shit, what if that was me for 20 years and no one fucking told me because it was just such an entertaining train wreck. And then when I went on stage, one of the really disconcerting things was the clarity that I had. Everything that was happening wasn't coming at me through a drug-induced or alcohol-induced haze. It was clear. It was crystal clear, and my perception was bang on. And it was really disconcerting because if I had told a joke and it didn't land where I thought it would, and it didn't get the reaction that I thought it would, I was so aware of it. And then you start getting self-doubt. You go, oh, fuck, what if I'm not funny? But then I was able to spin that because I remember the first time, which thankfully wasn't too long. It was only about my third gig or so that I did sober. And I got up there and I crushed. And it was so good because I could accept it 100% because I knew it was me. I was stone cold sober. I was dead straight. It was me. I was driving this bus and it was still good. And
fuck yeah.
And so yeah, so now I encourage everybody to again, I don't want to preach and I don't want to be a naysayer or anything like that, but I tell people, I tell comedians especially, 90% of what we do is just simply being quicker than the people we're performing to. And if they're already drunk and they're already hammered, then why would you take that advantage away from yourself by putting yourself on the same level as them? So I think that's how it's impacted my career, is now I really embrace the clarity and I really embrace being sharp and being 100% completely on top of my game. And I don't think I'd ever want to take that advantage away from myself.
Absolutely. And it's honestly, I remember when I first started getting sober and starting to get that clarity back and understanding just how clouded I was before and how much I was acting so far out of my true self and my best self, and just seeing all the things that I can accomplish sober, like I couldn't even dream about if I was still in addiction, like it's
That's
just
right.
It's insane. And I even found, obviously I can't relate to like the comedy side of things, not really a comedian, but in regards to struggling.
Watching you trying to get the intro right this morning was fucking hilarious.
Oh, listeners, yeah, no, that wasn't good.
Yeah, you guys don't realize we started filming this Thursday last week. I haven't showered in days. This is actually, this was a white shirt when we started. This is
damn it, Stephen.
Damn it. I'd like to welcome you to my last ever appearance on Shit.
And bed.
Cut. Just technical difficulties come to lost satellite.
Oh man, I'm never gonna get through this episode.
You can do it. I believe in you.
What I was gonna say was I know when I first started getting sober, there was a lot of doubt that I experienced even just within my own social capabilities, because it's like I kind of forgot how to talk to people.
Absolutely.
I was like, I don't know how to talk to people without being like absolutely fuck-eyed. Like, how do I do this sober?
Absolutely. And I certainly know a lot of people have that same thing with alcohol. And I remember a friend of mine, very, very intelligent and funny woman from the North Coast. And I know she won't mind me mentioning her. Her name is Mandy Nolan. She's lived an incredible life and she's an amazing human being. And a couple of years ago, not because she ever had a problem with it, she just wanted to give up the booze. She felt like it was becoming a little bit of a crutch, and especially in social situations. And I remember her. She loves writing a blog. She's a good blogger. And I remember her writing a thing saying that she goes, I always thought I was the most interesting person in the room, and I wasn't. I was just drunk. She goes, I'm boring as fuck. She said, now that I have to go to social situations and stand there sober and listen to myself talk, she's like, I'm boring as shit. But she's still sober, and she said she's learned how to be interesting sober, and it was a really good learning curve. So, but yeah, it's definitely a challenge for people. How do I
It
socialize? And I'm
definitely
the same.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
the
It
same
took
now.
me ages. Took me ages to kind of come to a place where I feel more confident in social settings without alcohol or drugs. And I think that honestly took me a good like 2 years to get to that point.
Oh,
It wasn't
absolutely.
quick.
Absolutely. Well, I'm at a stage now. People say to me, how do you socialize without drinking? And so because I do like to say, a lot of that, I'll be honest with you though, man, like a lot of the time I just don't bother. There's a lot of parties that I'm like, I'm just not going to go, especially if it's like a cocktail party or something like that. I'm like, it's not that I don't like you, and it's not that I don't love you as a person. I'm not going to be around a bunch of people whose sole purpose is to just fucking get fuck
Yeah,
eyed
the
as
whole
quickly as
event is
possible.
centered around alcohol.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. It's a
yeah.
fucking cocktail party. Like, you are going there to consume alcohol. But in social situations, I've just learned, I was just on a cruise with a good friend of mine, Nick Meredith, and he's not an alco, but after his shows, he enjoys having a couple of glasses of wine. And a lot of the times with comedians, especially on cruise ships, at the end of the night, we like to sit there and decompress. We've both done shows to the same audience. We've surrounded by the same people. And I can quite easily sit there, and some nights I'll have a 0 beer just to fit in. Other nights I won't. I'll have a glass of water. I don't care. But if it turns into a party and people turn around and they start drinking, then I know I can judge, and they get about 3 or 4 drinks in, and all of a sudden everyone starts to get a little more animated. They start getting a little bit louder. They start talking over the top of each other and stuff. And that's when I just very politely remove myself from the situation. And the good thing is that the people around me respect me and they know. And so when I say, that's it, guys, I'm turning in for the night, you'll always get, well, not always, but occasionally you'll get someone, oh, fucking you, soft cock. And you just fucking let them go. Just let them absolutely go. And I remember having it once. I had a person who was just a cockhead and was waving a glass of red wine under my nose going, oh, come back to the dark side. And I was just like, yeah, whatever.
What an asshole.
But it's all right, because I got my revenge the next morning when I was up at 6 o'clock and I'd gone to the gym, and then I was up on Lido deck having some breakfast, and this guy staggered in looking like he'd been run over by 7 Mack trucks and just collapsed. And I just turned around and looked at him and went, how's that fucking dark side working out for you? And he looks at me, he goes, oh, fuck off, shouldn't you be at the gym or something? I said, I've already been there, mate. I've been up for hours. So, but yeah, the socializing thing can be quite difficult, but everybody finds a way to make it work.
Yeah, it's tough at the start, but you'll get through it for sure, and it'll change over time. Yeah,
and also there's a lot of people getting sober now. There's a lot of people who don't drink, and we seem to find each other, and then we go and have our own fun.
Yes, absolutely. And now you mentioned as well to me previously in another video chat that you're currently working on working on becoming a keynote speaker. What are you hoping to achieve in regards to being an influence to others wanting to recover?
Well, so my target audience when it comes to the keynote stuff is I don't talk to addicts. What I want to do is I talk to people who aren't addicts. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to actually raise awareness of addiction. Because to people who don't suffer from addiction, to people who aren't that way inclined, the concept of addiction is just so foreign. They don't get it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're just like, well, why can't you just have a couple of beers and then stop? And it's like, because that's not the way my fucking brain's wired. If I could, I would. So that's what I want to do. I kind of want to let them into the mind of an addict and our thought processes and how we see the world and how we view substances. What I also want to do, and this is a bit that's going to make me unpopular with certain sectors of the community, and I don't really give a fuck. I'm not here to look at me. I'm not interested in being fucking socially accepted. What I want to do is I want to arm people with some tools I call it harm minimization. If they find themselves with an addict in their life that's affecting their life, their family, their workplace, their whatever. And it's just some tools on how they can minimize the impact and the damage that that addict can do to them. Because I'm sure, anyone that's ever had an addict in their life, or anyone who's ever been an addict, or anyone who is an addict, the damage that we can do is fucking unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is where I'm having so much trouble with the keynote, because it needs to be worded perfectly. Otherwise, it'll undo itself. But my number one thing is that we never give up hope. That's my number one message, is you never give up on someone. We always work toward the goal that eventually that person is going to go into recovery. They're going to get on top of their addiction and they're going to get better. So we always keep that in the back of our mind, and that's what we're working towards. So the thing that I want to do is I want to give people, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, the right or the freedom or the comfort or the confidence or whatever, to cut that addict loose before they do that much damage that there's not a relationship for them to come back to. Right?
Yeah.
Because if you keep an addict in your life while they're practicing their addiction, they will take everything from you, financially, emotionally, and they will destroy any feelings that you have for them whatsoever. And the reason that's such a bad thing is because eventually, when that person does get on top of their addiction and does start managing it and goes into recovery and becomes a functioning, they will come back to you to try and rekindle the friendship, and there'll be nothing left. And you won't be interested in letting that person back into their life because they've just done too much damage. So basically, a big point of my keynote is to say there needs to come a time, if you have an addict in your life, that you need to turn around and say to them, I can't have you in my life while you're still indulging in this behavior. I love you, and that's why I'm doing this, is so that when you get on top of this, you can come back to me and we can pick this up then. Because a lot of people feel so guilty and feel so responsible. They're like, I can't give up on this person. You're not. You are never giving up on them. But what you are doing is you are clinging to whatever vestige of that person is still there, so that when they sort their shit out, because even if you are qualified, sometimes you just can't help someone until they're ready to help themselves. You can't help them. You can talk to them. You can wish for them. You can pray for them, whatever the fuck it is that you want to do. But until they're ready to make that decision, until they're at that point in their life where they go, enough's enough, I'm getting on top of this, there's nothing you can do. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give people, to let them know that it's okay to remove that person from their life until they get on top of their shit. So that's what it's all about. It's about letting them know how our mind works, letting them know why we do the things we do, what's going through our mind, the cycle of self-loathing and guilt and everything, and then the self-medication to try and get away from that, and then the vicious cycle in the fact that you re-engage in the behavior that you hate yourself for, and then you hate yourself because you re-engaged, and then you re-engage because you hate yourself. And but the thing is, I want to let people know that we never give up. The depths that I've been in, the times that I've sat in dark rooms, not being able to ever see my life as being anything other than this shit, this spoonful of crap, this fucking needle full of hate, and just going, this is going to be my life forever. Or when I was drinking, clutching a fucking massive 7-Eleven big gulp cup full of white wine at 6 o'clock in the morning, and just going, this is it, this is me forever, this is all I'm ever going to be. The fact that I can sit here 5 years clean and sober, without having had a sip of alcohol, healthy, proves if I can do it, fucking anyone can.
Absolutely.
So never give up on people. Never give up on people. But don't let them get you to the point that you just burn them forever.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well. There is so much suffering that comes with addiction. It's not only just for the addict, it's for the loved ones as well. And
absolutely,
yeah, it's a huge impact. It's a huge impact. And me and my sister, we talked about that a lot in a previous episode as well. And she was really, really struggling watching me, fall down and try to get back up and then fall down 3 times more. Just watching the vicious cycle of addiction. And yeah, it can be really quite damaging for
Yep.
her emotional wellness and well-being, and making sure that people understand how to separate the addiction from the person as
Yeah,
well. I
the
think that's
addict
a
from the person.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it's separating that and understanding that, and that's the hard part for a lot of people who don't understand addiction, right? They just can't really
Mm.
understand that and separate it, and there's a lot of stigma and judgment around, if an addict is starting to do all these horrible and nasty things, that's who they are as a person, like that's them,
That's right.
that's what
And you and that's one of the important parts of my keynote, is explaining to people like what I had to do to control, and what I have to do still to control my addictions, is I've separated myself. So within me, I have an addict and I have a non-addict.
split
And
side, yeah.
yeah, a friend of mine said to me recently, "So you've conquered addiction with the cunning use of schizophrenia. Well done, Steve." But my number one thing when I'm talking to people who are looking at going into recovery, who are looking at conquering addictions, my thing is whatever it takes, whatever the fuck it takes. If you have to go to meetings to get yourself sober, go to meetings. If you have to, I've got friends of mine who run fucking 50 marathons a year. If that's what you have to do, do it. If you have to split yourself into two. And the reason that I do it, just to give you an insight, I know we're running out of time and we need to wrap up soon.
You're all good.
The reason I've done it, and the reason it works for me, and if this helps anyone else, feel free to take it on board. The reason I've separated myself is because if I separate myself and the addict that lives in me is a separate entity, I can control him, right? I can visualize him. I have a very clear picture in my mind of what the addict in me looks like. And I can control him. I can shut him up. I can put him in a box. I can lock him away. I know that he's there. I never forget that he's there. But once you forget that they're there, that's very dangerous, because that's when they attack. But if I don't separate him, then he's me, and I can't fight me. I can't lock me in a box. So
Yeah.
I've had to separate myself into the non-addict and the addict, and it's up to me who's driving this bus at any given time. And I have had times during my sobriety where I've had challenges thrown at me. I've had a marriage breakup. I've had a very serious motorcycle accident that put me in hospital with life-threatening injuries. I've had a global pandemic that shut down my entire industry, and I didn't know if I was going to ever have a job again and stuff like that. And those times, the addict rose right up real quick. That was his time to jump on and go, I'm going to take control of this bus.
Time to
I'm going to
shine.
drive. Yeah, exactly. And that addict lurks in the back, and that's what they look for. They look for moments of weakness. They look for any form of justification to take hold of the steering wheel again and drive the bus. And it's up to me and the non-addict to slap him back into his box and go, fucking no, you stay down there where I can see you. I'm driving this bus. You don't get a say. And so for me, the whole separating the addict from the non-addict is so personal within myself. And so if you can do that for another human being, if you can look at someone who's currently in the midst of an addiction and go, this isn't them, this is the addict, whether you want to look at it as a split personality, a disease, an illness, a sickness, or whatever, you need to realize that it's not them, but they are still in there. They are still in there somewhere, and they are as scared of this person, and they hate this person as much as possibly, probably even more than you do. But never forget that they're in there. They're in there. And with what you were saying with your sister, my sister watched me go through it as well, and she watched me go through everything: the drugs, the alcohol, the whole 9 yards. So as much as it is terrifying and sad and depressing and everything like that, my sister, only a couple of months ago, just rang me out of the blue. And this is the other side of it. As much as it can be terrible and traumatizing, they also get to share in your successes.
Yes,
my sister,
so true.
My sister rang me just out of the blue the other month. It was wonderful, just out of the blue in the afternoon. And I'll be honest with you, I picked up the phone and went, oh, fuck, what does she want now? And I'm like, hi. And she rang me up and she said, I just wanted to tell you how proud I am of you. She said, because it was the 12-month anniversary of my wife and I splitting up. And Tracy rang me and she said, I just want to ring up and let you know that I'm aware of what today is. She said, and I remember you ringing me 12 months ago from the car saying, I've got my guitar, my PlayStation, and the clothes on my back, and I'm fucking leaving. And she said, I just want to tell you how proud I am that you didn't just go back to your normal routine of self-abuse and substance abuse and addiction. She said, you've done really well. You've come so far. And it was just so nice to hear that,
That's awesome.
So as much as we like to beat ourselves up for the shit that we did while we were using and everything like that, it's important to realize that, we do get a chance to make up for it, and we do get a chance to make amends to the people who we put through hell with our use. And we do that by staying strong and staying clean and staying sober. And that was what got me through. When my wife and I broke up, I had a bottle of vodka sitting in front of me and I was ready to go. And the addict was like, woo, yeah. But he let himself down, because I remember this voice in my head, which was the addict saying, we've lost everything, it's time to drink. And I remember the non-addict picking up on that and going, hang on a second. No, we haven't. We haven't lost everything at all. We've lost our wife, and that's horrible. But we've still got our career. We've still got our health. But most importantly, we've got the love and respect of the people around us because of what we've overcome and because of who we are now. And if you pick that bottle up, then you're going to lose everything. You're going to lose that respect. But most importantly, I was going to lose my self-respect. I was, as much as in the short term, I would have gone, yeah, I'm drunk and it's fucking great. I know I would have woken up going, I let myself
so
down.
Much regret.
Let myself down. Yeah. And now I get the other side of that. I get to be proud because I fucking didn't.
Absolutely.
I get to high five myself and go, fucking good on you for being strong enough to not fucking let that little prick talk you.
Well, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. It takes some serious strength.
It's not. Yeah, I had a massive panic attack. I was vomiting. I had the shakes. I had the whole 9 yards. But yeah, here we are. And whatever doesn't kill us makes us fucking stronger.
That's it. Well, you said that beautifully. I loved how you used that metaphor of like the split personalities, people, because that's exactly what I do. I always refer to my addict self and then my true self. So it's they're completely separate, different people to me. And there's some things that I look back on and during my time of addiction, and I think, wow, I would never actually do that. Even this morning, I was thinking about how there was times where, it sounds so terrible to say, but I'd like hooked up with friends like exes and stuff like that during my time of addiction. And I was like, why would I ever do that? That is just so not in my character at all. I didn't care for those people either. It wasn't even because I like genuinely wanted to. It was just like, I don't know, there's a madman running around there. Like
Nothing makes sense when you're off your face, but it all makes sense. It all makes perfect sense. And then you sit back afterwards with clarity and just go, oh no, those pants were a terrible idea.
But no, that was so well said.
Thank you.
No worries. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Stephen. I really, really appreciate
it. No worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Yeah, it was a really good insight into your journey. And I'm just really proud of you and how far you've come. So thank you so much.
And you. Every one of us that gets up every day and makes a conscious decision to not use should be patting themselves on the back every day and feeling proud, because whilst I'm lucky that I'm at a stage now where it's not a constant thought, I don't have to constantly fight the urge to drink and blah, 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 blah. It is still there. And, and every now and again, the addict, he gets in your ear and goes, oh, we could just have one beer and imagine how cool it would be. You just go, shut the fuck up, addict. Get back in your box. Get back in your box.
Oh, thank you so much, Stephen. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. I'm going to go and tell dick jokes to strangers in a tent.
You enjoy. See you, Stephen.
See you, mate. Bye now.